To announce that we are live from Cannes. People often mispronounce it as Cannes. It's Cannes. It is located in France. The nearest airport is Nice, not nice. So I am excited to be able to be press accredited to cover this wonderful event. It's Cannes Lions. It is creative. Let us not confuse it with the film festival, which is also hosted here in France. For me, I come through with a different lens. I come through the lens of culture and sports and journalism, the intersectionality between sports and marketing. And so with that being said, this week from the 22nd through the 26th, included but was not limited to some of the biggest brand names that are associated with sports. One may ask, why are you, Lisa, interested in the Cannes Lions Festival? What does that have to do with sports? It has everything to do with sports. Cannes is recognized, and in the course of being recognized, their familiarity is the intersectionality of different creatives, and those creatives include, but are not limited to, those who provide programs, services, corporate branding, sports marketing in the field of sports. Sports is more than a game, it is a business. That is the tag, respectfully, that I have used for years. How does that apply to my purpose for being in France? Who flies all across the world almost, right? So that you can be a part of something like this. This is more than a festivity to me. This is a learning opportunity. And I think all of us, regardless of where we are in this space, every single one of us always should be in a predicament where we are not afraid to continue to learn. So that is my personal angle here. It allows me to learn. But who am I learning for? I'm learning for you, those of you who follow me, so that there is substance to be said. It is not simply about clickbaits and likes. It is not about the social media, but it's about creating community. And community allows for me to engage in acts of humanity. And some of that is bringing Cannes live to you. And that includes part of this. I've already written some articles. One is already dropped today on the intersectionality between sports and marketing. And let us start with that. I want to start with how someone like an Angel Wilson, who is a brand household name for those of us who follow not simply the WNBA, but for those of us who are attempting to raise our young women and girls in a space of being Black, bold, brainy, and beautiful. And that is who she personified. And then we saw the Wheaties box. Everyone was happy with the historical significance. But is there historical significance, respectfully, about an Angel Wilson being 4 hue tones lighter than her natural skin? For one who constantly conveys to us the importance and significance of being great in the skin that we're in. I remember in 2021, a then 24-year-old Aja did an article for Players Tribute. And she talked about a bronze on a college campus that at one given point in time in her life, her grandmother couldn't even walk that campus. She talked about some of the struggles of what it meant to be an athlete, what it meant to be an aspiring future professional athlete, and more compelling, what it meant to be Black and to be a woman. She talked about what it meant to have to carry the burden of her Blackness, carry the burden of her pain, her suffering, her struggles. Because what it meant to be Black, what it meant to be Black and woman was to be strong. And what it means to be strong for so many of us is that you cannot wear this badge of weakness. What, in fact, does it mean to be weak? And so I looked at the Wheaties box and I said, wow, they got Asha? They made Aja 3-4 tones lighter. So for part of what we were doing here at Cannes is the opportunity as a member of the press to be an editor-in-chief, as well as the founder of Seltzer Sports and the podcast and the Fanakin brand, respectfully, a unique brand of sports fans, not only fans, right? So what it means to curate travel, all of that is here. And why did I raise this concern? Because it's part of the intersectionality of sports and marketing, a part of being the creatives. It's not simply a conversation about the role of artificial intelligence. It is the role of what the humans are doing and what they think they should be doing. It is us having an opportunity to engage in mass dialogue. and me to be able, on the media side, respectfully, to chime in and to ask the important question to General Mills: why was Aja Wilson's skin 4 hue tones lighter? And why was she on the box wearing what we would call a dirty blonde, meaning a darker blonde wig? This is a young woman who has constantly said to the world that she embodies the principles of what it means, and she embraces said principles of what it means to be Black, to be beautiful, to be bold, and to be brainy. And you take that woman and you put her on a box of Wheaties and you tell the world that this is a historical moment. Is it? Was it? Historically significant for who? The grandmother who couldn't walk on the campus because she was Black? Historically significant for who? Young Black girls who are going to look on that cover and think the idealism of beauty in sports marketing means you have to be light, bright, and damn near white, or you have to look like that. And that's a sad thing. We already struggle, as it were, being Black and female in the space of sports, particularly myself. I'm a heterosexual Black woman. And being heterosexual, you often have to quiet and tone it down. People don't want to hear that conversation, what it means to be heterosexual and be Black in the field of sports, but more compelling, what it means to not be out there being an OnlyFans as opposed to a Vatican, right? And so in that space, there are already obstacles that we encounter when we have these conversations, or be it quietly or in a setting like this. What does it mean to be an Aja Wilson? And you're speaking as if you want to send a message of empowerment and engagement to young Black women and girls. But then we look at the box, and millions of people will see the box of Wheaties. Many children who don't know yet who Aja Wilson is will have the opportunity to walk down all of these aisles in grocery stores all across the planet where General Mills products are sold, the United States, the UK, etc. And they're going to stop and they're going to see this woman with a basketball. And they're going to stop and they're going to see this Black woman and they're going to ask, who is she? And Aja, do you want them to think that the definition of what it means to be Black and beautiful is to have a blonde wig on? I mean, we've done the same thing with Savannah James, LeBron James' wife. Her skin is 3-5 times lighter. Her nose has been changed, respectfully. If not, her pictures surely make it look as if they have. And filter to the skin. And I'm not saying that as Black women that we should not, in the field of sports or anywhere else, any other industry, want to look beautiful. The question is, what is our definition of beautiful? Is our definition that we have to be a certain hue, a certain quality of hair? And I don't have a problem with women who wear wigs. I really don't. Because there are times when we have bad hair days, right? But there are also times when we want to change a little bit and we don't want to dye our natural hair. And so if you're not willing to do that and you're saying I can simply put on a wig, but is putting on the wig what makes you look beautiful? Or is it you yourself? Is the blonde hair is what makes you beautiful? Is the skin hue being 4 times lighter? So it is in an environment like this where those questions were posed. And the question was simple. How do we, and those of us in the space of the business of sports, and those of us who are brand creators, and those who are content creators, create, respectfully, an environment where to be Black and beautiful doesn't mean to have blonde hair and a skin tone of lightness? That's not what it means. The power of advertisement, the power of content, the power of marketing, send a message to millions of young girls, Black, white, Latina, mixed Latinas, those who claim to be Black and those who do not, for them to be able to walk into a grocery store. They're going to see your box, Aja Wilson. They're going to see the box, General Mills. And for them, it works because they have toned down her Blackness in a way for mass marketability. But how, therefore, do we in this space say you can be a messenger? You can be one who personifies Blackness, beauty, brain, and still be bold. And be bold enough to accept who you are. And be bold enough to say, I see the Williams girls, Venus and Serena. And I see how sometimes she appears filtered 6-7 times lighter with these stretches of blonde hair. Again, If what you want to do to turn on your mate works for you, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, that's fine. You can do that. But if we're doing it within the space of saying this is beautiful, then there is a problem with the messaging. And so in a setting like Cannes, we do ask. And General Mills skipped around the question. I went through their public relations. They skipped around. I went directly to the head, their CMO. They skipped around. I don't like to use the word dodge, but they dodged the question. They evaded it. They avoided it. And so I'm still asking, how do you engage in cultural awareness with cultural aesthetics and still be able to market an athlete like Audra Wilson? How do we allow for her to maintain cultural relevance at the same time that we allow her to be who she is? She always says, I am who I am. But the I am is not a Black woman who is 4 times lighter with blonde hair. That may work for your personal love life. It may even work for your personal life. But it doesn't work when you skip a couple of beats and you use it as a marketing tool. So some of the other issues I raised here, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. You know, our 2 WNBA champs, they're going to come up. I call them champs. They're future champs. There's no doubt about that. Setting aside titles for a moment, respectfully, I talked about and I asked the questions about athlete equity. And athlete equity means this. How do you take a Caitlin Clark and an Angel Reese and market them to urban and rural America in a way that is affordable to the very base to which you're attempting to market? It is one thing for us to say that, you know, she's from Iowa, right? Iowa is red country. It's not blue, no matter how liberal you try and make Caitlin. Iowa is red country. It definitely is. Part of the electoral state, but it's red country. Angel represents the blue America. You have urban and middle America, rural America. For most of us who are sitting behind the desk, you think this is a great opportunity to expand your base because both of them, by all intents and purposes, are marketable. But how do you do it with the price tag Nike, the price tag Reebok, brand ambassador Shaquille O'Neal, brand ambassador, respectfully, Allen Iverson, president and vice president of operations? How do you do that? Those who are overseeing price margins in a way that urban and rural America can afford, respectfully, to be able to purchase the athletic wear and the sneakers. I remember when Shaquille O'Neal was drafted and Shaquille O'Neal had the opportunity to represent Reebok. And at that point in time, he alleged that he had been approached by a lot of families, and these families were saying the sneakers were priced too high. As such, he declined to continue his partnership with Reebok at that time. And what he decided to do was to branch out, create his own brand, his own sneakers, and sell them in Walmart. And that worked temporarily. And then he did other projects, including but not limited to Li Ning, which everybody's now associating with Curry, Stephon Curry. But, you know, Shaquille O'Neal was on that brand too. People forget that. So is D Wade, to name a few basketball players, African-American NBA players who have been a part of that brand for some years now. That started sometime back in 1989, the former Olympian. And so I thought about this over the week. If Shaquille O'Neal made the decision that the brand was worth it, but the shoes were not in terms of what their price margin was, why do it to Black women and families? Why price her shoes $100 and more? There are households where there are 3 to 4 children. There are households where 2 out of the 3 to 4 girls. They're going to want to have the Angel Reese, apparel, and they should. Middle America, they're going to want Caitlin Clark shoes, but should it break the budget? So when we're doing this brand marketing and we hone into rural and urban America, do we do it in a means in which we forget the target audience, that we forget their income, that we forget how much money these families are making when we're designing shoes that we're marketing to a specific base? When we think about the marketability of Caitlin Clark, there are many who are trying to assert she's the Allen Iverson, the Tiger Woods, and the Michael Jordans of Nike and the sports world. That is totally misleading. She will never sell on that level, and that's not because of her brand in and of itself, and not because of anything she did wrong. It's because she's not in the NBA, period. It's a conversation people don't want to have. I looked at the data, I looked at the numbers. There's never, ever been a female athlete that is sold on the wise of a Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods or Allen Iverson. And I respectfully don't think there ever will be. There are a lot of people when it comes to women in sports, her situation is different. Come a little closer. She's white and female. You're not going to have the urban community who embrace the Allen Iversons and the Michael Jordans and the Williams girls run out and buy Caitlin Clark shoes. Will she be able to survive off of an only white market? Of course she will. Will she only have a white market? No, she will not. There will be some families who will invest in her. But there's a difference between the marketability of a female athlete versus a male athlete. There are many of us who will wear Messi from, in soccer. We will wear Beckham for soccer. There's something to be said about, even though these are white and they're males, we will support them. We're going to support George Russell for the Formula One, right? We're going to support that, Antonelli. But when it comes time to our females, it's different. Because now you're having to cater to who? Black females. And we're not going to go out there respectfully and purchase a Caitlin Clark shoe. Not in the numbers that they're suspecting. So for all you so-called sports analysts who are saying, she's going to sell like a Michael Jordan, not in terms of crossover, she won't. Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, Tiger Woods, they were able to cross over, as was the Venus Williams girls. But the majority of their base came from the Black community. And when we spend, if you look at all the numbers, we spend in the billions. And it's sad because we have a consumer mentality for the most part, not a producer's mentality. That being said, let's look at some other things that happened over this week that was worth the conversation. So price margin was something I was asking about. I'm waiting to hear back from Nike. Everybody's putting me on this hold. You don't want Lisa Hampton asking the questions. I came here to ask the questions and I wanted the answers. And so they did what's called the Sports Beach, in which that was hosted at the Carlton Hotel. And it's here in Cannes, France. And I specify that because there are some events that are being held in Nice, outside of the city of Cannes, France. But we're here. And so for what is being held here, that is part of the bigger brand, respectfully, those questions were being posed. You had a couple of people here from different facets of the industry. You're going to learn more about that as I continue to deliver a couple of shows and articles. I don't want to put out too much information up front, but for what we did there, that was worth it. Some of them are going to be live, and it's not always going to be in this position here. But I wanted to come to you live, me, raw, real, and relevant. And so that we're here. This is what I'm trying to do. This is the delivery that I'm attempting to give to you so that you can learn what is happening here. The intersectionality, sports and marketing, the intersectionality of how do we embrace culture with corporate, okay? Those are two C's we have to be reminded of, and that is what brought me here. The other question that I asked is regard to athlete equity and risk branding. And what does that mean? It means when you had the Allen Iversons and the Ja Morants, respectfully, and even the Alyssa Thomas and the incident that just took place with her with Caitlin Clark, how do you manage to promote? What is the risk factors when you deal with certain athletes? So that is a question that I had asked, and I had asked that question. This was before the incident that transpired with Alyssa and Caitlin. And let us be reminded that even though former Twitter has acknowledged that the video that has been circulated has been altered and AI generated, I don't think they did enough. They could have simply took the video down. Although it is an act that is not and should never be supported in professional sports. I said the same thing when a player that plays for Toronto Tempo did that on or about 2 weeks ago to Angel Reese. I reached out to the commissioner of the WNBA and public relations and the like. Why wasn't that particular athlete deemed a flagrant foul? And why wasn't that athlete suspended? Right? And so we wait now for it to happen for Caitlin, for us to be up in arms, like, oh my God, she's being assaulted. What happened to her should have never happened. But let us be clear as it pertains to the video that is actually being presented, that video is not a reflection of what actually has transpired. There was never another teammate who came up and said, back away, Alyssa. None of that ever happened. The duration of the length of time in which she had her hand applied to Caitlin's throat is incorrect. But let us not forget what did happen. And let us not be sidetracked by that. So when you have an athlete who's engaged in such acts, and let's bring it down to the NBA side with what took place with Wemby and the act that transpired in addressing him as it pertains to what happened with Jalen Brunson. That should never be part of the game. Flagrant foul? Indeed. I didn't think so on the athletic side. Do we have a bias, an implicit bias, when we look at what men do versus what the women do? When I say Wemby do it, I'm like, wow, look at Wemby, right? But then when you see Alyssa do that, engage in that type of force respectfully against Caitlin, it's like, wow, my goodness, how did it reach the WNBA? And do they feel as female athletes that they have to play that way? So let me bring this into perspective. What does any of that have to do with Cannes Lions? It has a lot to do with Cannes Lions. And that is because when they are marketing, they make a decision, the CMOs, what athlete they choose to market. What is the athlete's equity versus risk branding? Are you willing to risk it? I remember Allen Iverson said one of the relationships that he had with Reebok included, but was not limited to, the very fact that he was simply able to be AI. Don't we love him, right? He was able to be AI. And in the course of him being Allen Iverson, he did whatever he wanted to do, whenever he wanted to do it. And Reebok stood by him. Are we still doing that today? No, we're not. Because we look at when statements were made by Kerry Irvin, he simply did a repost of a distributed documentary by Prime, Amazon, Jeff Bezos' brand, right? Which now has a special contract, media rights, part of a $76 billion deal with the NBA. And all Kerry did was repost it. It was about Black Hebrews. And we do exist, okay? Some of us, our fathers are Jews. In my family, okay? And so I took issue with somebody punishing a Black person for reposting. But then we had the Anti-Defamation League state that the organization who was behind the documentary was on their list, respectfully. And we recently heard about the Anti-Defamation League and the Poverty Centers list and how those companies are operating, respectfully. And so with that being said, we want to be careful how we punish athletes. And he was punished indeed to the tune of a loss of $17 million. Fast forward, John Morant. It is perfectly legal for him to be in possession of a firearm. He is not a felon. He's not a convicted felon. But assuming an arguendo he is, the former late Justice Antonio Scalia said in a brief that he had written prior to his transition, that even if, a ruling that he wrote, even if you're a felon, that the Founding Fathers never meant for you to be denied the right to protect your family. And so that being said, bringing it full circle, Commissioner Adam Silver, there was nothing illegal about what he did, but he was fined by the league for that. So is Draymond Green. And so this is athlete equity versus risk branding. Here you have a Draymond Green, a four-time NBA champion for the Golden State Warriors. Who's branding him? Who's looking to do business with him? And look at the difference between him and a Steph Curry. Steph Curry comes across respectfully as the athlete who has mass crossover appeal. Okay, so when we hear those terms, they're basically saying he can cross over to whites. And white people will buy his brand and they will embrace him. Don't know how that's going to work out with him doing business with Ling Ning, but we'll see. Okay, I mean, I came here to France with my Curry sneakers, so you're going to see a picture of that. You know, I still love the brand, quite frankly, his Under Armour brand. And so we'll see what he does with Ling Ning, and maybe you'll, let me wear those. But nevertheless, for the pair that I actually secured and because I like the brand. I wear the shirts, the t-shirts, and I wear the sneakers, but I also have Pumas and I also have Adidas and the like. And so for those of us who find ourselves in those spaces, right? Okay, bring it back. The point that I'm making, he has mass crossover appeal because he is not a risk to a brand, at least not yet, right? But his very same teammate is. We look at the other teammate, Klay Thompson, who is in this relationship, respectfully, or showmance with, or maybe a full-blown relationship, respectfully, with Megan Thee Stallion. What is the risk factors associated with that? And then, so those are factors that's the question that I ask. Wherein you have these type of athletes who find themselves, respectfully, facing risk branding issues. How do you do that? What do you do with that? They simply continue to play the game and you can't market them. Curry has gone on to mass market, respectfully, a very nice brand of his own, a clothing line, beautiful items. They are well made, marketable, accessible, and affordable. Okay, so he has availability, accessibility, okay, and affordability. He has those 3 A's. Okay, but a lot of people can't do that. And they don't have that base. And I think his base was the fact that he was a native New Jersey, New Yorker. He had a base with a former NBA player, his godfather, Rodney Strickland, who's been very well associated with the hip-hop community of the 1990s. So Kerry's also had his father, who's a brilliant man, and his mother, his stepmother, his birth mother had transitioned some years ago. But his stepmother, and is a wonderful person in terms of her corporate background in the space of sports. She started out in radio accounting and sales management. She has been a gift to him and a blessing to his brand. And so he has that. But for the athletes that like him, that couldn't afford to lose $17 million, what do you do with that? Anthony Edwards, another one. You have an issue of athlete equity versus risk branding. What do you do with that when you have him in the middle of a paternity lawsuit, right?